My sister and I graduated from medical school together, but our parents paid off only her loans and said, "She deserves it more, sweetheart." When they came to celebrate her being debt-free, they had no idea what surprise I had waiting for them. "She deserves it more," my mom said, her gaze fixed elsewhere, dismissing me with a casual wave. That single sentence, delivered with such nonchalance, twisted something deep inside my gut, shattering my image of family. It struck harder than any physical blow, leaving me reeling, wondering what injustice had just unfolded. There I stood, paralyzed in my parents' kitchen, my medical school diploma still crisp in its frame, processing the words. "Mom," I began, my voice steady despite the faint tremor in my hands. "We both graduated with honors. We had the exact same GPA. I don't understand why you and Dad would pay off all of Jessica's loans, but none of mine." Finally, her eyes met mine. Her expression, that familiar blend of disappointment and weary exasperation. "Audrey," she sighed, as if explaining something obvious. "Your sister doesn't have a wealthy mentor like Dr. Fleming taking an interest in her future. You've always had advantages Jessica didn't." I almost choked on a bitter laugh. Advantages? Dr. Vivian Fleming became my research advisor because I had earned that position, putting in 80-hour weeks in the lab while Jessica was skiing in Aspen with our parents. My advantage was working myself to the bone, sacrificing leisure, while my twin received their unwavering emotional and financial cushioning. "So, I'm being punished," I asked, the raw hurt seeping into my tone, "for finding my own mentorship opportunities?" My father walked in then, putting an arm around my mother's shoulder. "No one's punishing you, Audrey. We're just being practical. Your sister needs more help than you do. You've always been more resourceful." Resourceful, that word. It was their convenient justification for everything. It explained why they never attended my undergraduate research presentations, yet flew across the country for Jessica's volleyball tournaments. Resourceful. Their explanation for why Jessica received a brand new car for her 20th birthday, while my gift was a gas station card. Tomorrow was Jessica's debt-free celebration party. Their idea, of course. They'd invited everyone, extended family, her friends, even some of our former professors. The invitations read, "Celebrating Jessica's achievement," as if graduating debt-free was her accomplishment, not our parents' financial decision. "I need to head out," I managed, finally gathering my bag. "Early shift at the hospital tomorrow. Will you still make it to Jessica's party?" Mom asked, a flicker of concern finally in her voice. "Not for me, but for how my absence might mar my sister's special day. I'll be there," I promised, though the thought alone made my stomach twist into knots. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Fleming. "Need to speak with you urgently about the Patterson Fellowship." Big news. I stared at the screen, a cold, unyielding realization settling over me. My parents' favoritism wasn't just unfair. It was about to become publicly humiliating. And there was nothing I could do to stop what was coming. My twin sister, Jessica, and I had been on oddly divergent paths since the moment we were born. I arrived first. She followed 6 minutes later. Family lore painted me as quiet and observant, Jessica announcing her arrival with strong, healthy cries. Perhaps that initial pattern foreshadowed everything that followed. Throughout our Cleveland childhood, Jessica was the outgoing twin, the one who effortlessly made friends and excelled at sports. I was quieter, more bookish, spending countless hours in our local library, learning about everything from astronomy to zoology. Our parents attended every one of Jessica's soccer games and dance recitals. My science fair victories warranted a quick, "Good job, Audrey," and a pat on the head. By high school, the pattern was firmly established. When we both declared our intentions to pursue medicine, our parents seemed genuinely thrilled for Jessica. For me, however, there were concerned conversations about the immense workload and whether I could handle the pressure. "Medical school isn't just about being smart, Audrey," my father had warned. "It's determination and grit. Jessica has always pushed herself harder." The irony was a bitter taste I couldn't quite swallow. Throughout my undergraduate studies at Ohio State, I maintained a perfect GPA while working part-time to cover my expenses. Jessica, meanwhile, struggled with organic chemistry and physics, necessitating expensive tutors our parents readily provided. When she needed to retake the MCAT, they funded an exclusive prep course. When I scored in the 98th percentile on my first attempt, they simply nodded and offered a "that's nice, dear." Despite everything, I never truly resented Jessica. She was my sister, my twin, and I loved her. She didn't engineer our parents' favoritism. She merely benefited from it. Sometimes, I even suspected she felt uncomfortable with their obvious preference, though she never voiced it directly. We both gained acceptance to the same medical school in Michigan. For 4 years, we studied together, supported each other through grueling rotations, and celebrated each other's successes. I harbored a quiet hope that perhaps, finally, our parents would see us as equally accomplished. Instead, they found new ways to elevate Jessica's achievements while minimizing mine. When I was selected to present research at a national conference, Jessica coincidentally received an award for community service that same weekend. Guess which event our parents attended? But everything began to shift during our final year. Dr. Vivian Fleming, a renowned neurosurgeon, noticed my research on pediatric traumatic brain injuries. Under her mentorship, I flourished. For the first time, I had someone who recognized my potential, who pushed me to excel not despite my personality, but because of it. "You have a gift for research, Audrey," Dr. Fleming told me once. "You see patterns others miss. That kind of insight can't be taught." If only my parents could see me through her eyes. The morning before Jessica's celebration, I met Dr. Fleming in her office. She was a striking woman in her 60s, with silver hair and penetrating blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Her office walls were a testament to her brilliance: awards, published papers, photos with medical luminaries from around the world. "Audrey, sit down," she commanded, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I have extraordinary news." My heart hammered against my ribs. For weeks, I've been waiting with bated breath to hear about the Patterson Fellowship at Johns Hopkins, the most prestigious neurosurgical research position in the country. Only one graduating medical student nationwide received it. "The committee has made their decision on the Patterson Fellowship," Dr. Fleming stated, her expression carefully neutral. I held my breath, every nerve ending tingling. "They've selected you," she finally said, breaking into a broad, genuine smile. "Congratulations, Dr. Audrey Collins. You're going to Baltimore." Joy, disbelief, and a profound sense of validation crashed over me in powerful waves. The Patterson Fellowship, the pinnacle achievement for any neurosurgeon, and it was mine. I don't know what to say. I stammered, overwhelmed. "You earned this," Dr. Fleming affirmed, her voice firm and unequivocal. "Your research on neurovascular regeneration after traumatic injury was groundbreaking. The committee was particularly impressed with your dual approach, combining surgical innovation with pharmacological intervention. The fellowship included a generous stipend, a housing allowance, and, most crucially, complete loan forgiveness. I would be debt-free, just like Jessica, but through my own merit rather than parental decree." "There's more," Dr. Fleming continued, her eyes twinkling mischievously. "I've been invited to Jessica's celebration tonight. Your parents extended an invitation as a courtesy to faculty, completely unaware of our mentorship. I'd like to announce the fellowship news there, if you're comfortable with that." My stomach dropped. "I don't know, Dr. Fleming. It's supposed to be Jessica's night, and my parents might see it as me trying to steal her spotlight." Dr. Fleming's expression hardened ever so slightly. "Audrey, I've observed your family dynamic over the past 2 years. I've seen your parents at hospital functions, heard how they speak about both you and your sister. I understand your hesitation, but sometimes recognition needs to be public to be acknowledged at all." She was right, of course. If my parents heard about the fellowship privately, they'd undoubtedly find a way to minimize it, or attribute it to sheer luck rather than my hard-won achievement. "Okay," I nodded slowly. "You can announce it." As I left her office, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Mom's going overboard for tonight. It's embarrassing. Wish she'd put this much effort into celebrating both of us graduating. See you there, love. I stared at the message, a strange sense of confusion washing over me. It was the first time Jessica had ever acknowledged our parents' unequal treatment. Before I could formulate a response, another text came through, this time from my mother. Don't forget business casual for tonight. And please let your sister have her moment. This is very important to her. The stark contrast between the two messages was jarring. Perhaps I had been wrong about Jessica all along. And perhaps tonight would finally reveal the truths my parents had been assiduously avoiding for 26 years. Jessica's debt-free celebration was being held at an upscale restaurant in downtown Detroit. My parents had rented out the entire rooftop terrace, an extravagance that surely cost thousands. As I stepped off the elevator, I was greeted by a massive banner reading, "Congratulations, Dr. Jessica." No mention that there were, in fact, 2 Dr. Collins in the family now. I smoothed down my navy blue dress and took a deep, fortifying breath. This was Jessica's night. Regardless of what Dr. Fleming planned to announce, I wouldn't let years of resentment ruin my relationship with my twin. Jessica spotted me immediately, breaking away from a cluster of relatives to rush over. She looked absolutely stunning in a silver cocktail dress, her blonde hair identical to mine in color, but cut in a trendy bob while I kept mine long, styled perfectly. Thank God you're here. Aunt Patty has asked me 5 times if I have a boyfriend yet. I laughed, a genuine sound despite my underlying nerves. What did you tell her? That I'm married to medicine, but if she knows any eligible neurosurgeons, I'm taking applications. Jessica linked her arm through mine, her smile faltering slightly. Seriously, though, this is ridiculous. Mom invited half the medical school. Dean Wilson is here. I scanned the crowded terrace and, indeed, spotted the dean chatting animatedly with our father. Wow, they really went all out. All out. It's mortifying. Jessica lowered her voice, a flicker of genuine discomfort on her face. And why just for me? We both graduated. We both worked our asses off. The tight knot in my stomach loosened ever so slightly. Maybe Jessica was more aware than I'd given her credit for. Audrey. Jessica. My mother appeared then, a champagne flute clutched in her hand, her eyes bright with a practiced hostess gleam. Jessica, the Hendersons just arrived. You remember Thomas Henderson, the chief of surgery at Cleveland Memorial? You should come say hello. She took Jessica's arm, gently but firmly separating us. Then, she glanced back at me. Audrey, could you check if the caterers have put out the gluten-free options? Your cousin Beth is being difficult about her diet again. And just like that, I was relegated to catering management, while Jessica was paraded before hospital administrators. Some things, it seemed, never changed. I was directing wait staff to the correct table when Dr. Fleming arrived. She looked effortlessly elegant in a crimson pantsuit, commanding attention without uttering a single word. Audrey, she said warmly, embracing me. Are you ready for our announcement? I'm not sure, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. The timing feels complicated. Dr. Fleming surveyed the party, taking in the grand banner, the professionally decorated cake with only Jessica's name, the slideshow of photos that featured Jessica prominently, with me occasionally visible, a shadowy presence in the background. I see, she said quietly, her voice tinged with a new understanding. More complicated than I realized. Across the terrace, I watched as my parents introduced Jessica to Dr. Margaret Wu, the chief neurosurgeon at Detroit Medical Center, where both Jessica and I had applied for residency positions. My stomach clenched anew. Were they trying to secure Jessica a spot through personal connections, bypassing merit? Dr. Fleming. My father had spotted her and was now approaching, my mother and Jessica in tow. What an honor to have you join us. I understand you've done some work with Audrey. Asterisk some work? Asterisk, Dr. Fleming raised an elegant eyebrow, a subtle challenge in her tone. Audrey has been my primary research partner for the past 2 years. Her contribution to our traumatic brain injury study was instrumental to its success. My parents exchanged a glance I couldn't quite interpret. How nice, my mother said vaguely. Jessica has also been very involved in neurosurgical research. In fact, Dr. Wu was just saying how impressed she is with Jessica's application to her program. A flush of anger rising in my cheeks. Jessica hadn't done neurosurgical research. Her focus was neuropsychiatry, an entirely different field. My parents were blatantly misrepresenting her experience, potentially at the expense of my own opportunities. Dr. Fleming's expression remained pleasantly composed, but I could discern a steely glint in her perceptive blue eyes. "Is that so? How fascinating," she mused. I was under the impression that Jessica's focus was on psychiatric applications, rather than surgical interventions. An awkward silence descended, thick and suffocating, over our small group. My last sliver of hope that this announcement might somehow mend things was closing in around me. It was going to make everything worse, not better. The dinner portion of the evening was underway, with my parents seated regally at the head table alongside Jessica, our grandparents, and Dr. Wu. I, meanwhile, was placed at a secondary table with distant cousins and family friends, close enough to hear the conversation, but clearly not invited to participate in it. We always knew Jessica was destined for greatness. My father was pontificating to Dr. Wu. Even when the girls were little, Jessica showed such determination. She's always been our ambitious one. Each word was a tiny, precisely aimed dagger, twisting deeper into an old wound. I pushed my food around my plate, my appetite utterly gone. Nearby, Dr. Fleming was seated with other faculty members, occasionally catching my eye with a sympathetic glance. After dessert was served, my father stood, tapping his glass for attention. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate our daughter Jessica's remarkable achievement. As many of you know, medical school is a grueling journey, and to emerge not only with a degree but debt-free is truly something special." The crowd applauded politely, but Jessica looked increasingly uncomfortable. "We're blessed to have been able to support Jessica throughout her education," my mother added, standing to join my father. "We always believed in investing in her future because we knew she would make us proud." I stared at my plate, hot tears threatening to spill over. The wording was precise, deliberate. They had invested in Jessica, not in both their daughters. The message couldn't have been clearer. "Actually," Jessica said suddenly, rising to her feet, her voice cutting through the polite chatter. She looked directly at me, her expression a mix of apology and fierce resolve. "This celebration feels incomplete. Audrey and I both graduated with identical GPAs. We both worked incredibly hard. And frankly, Audrey worked harder because she did it without the support system I had." A hush, profound and absolute, fell over the crowd. My parents looked utterly stunned. "Jessica," my mother whispered, a desperate plea in her voice. "This isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," Jessica insisted, her voice steady and unwavering. "I can't accept recognition that excludes my sister. It's not right, and it never has been." My throat tightened with emotion, a mixture of overwhelming gratitude and years of pent-up sorrow. After all these years, Jessica was publicly acknowledging the imbalance. It was both deeply vindicating and heartbreaking. My father recovered quickly, his voice overly jovial, trying to smooth over the awkwardness. "Of course, we're proud of both our girls. Audrey has done very well, too. But tonight is about celebrating Jessica being debt-free, which is a special achievement. An achievement you facilitated, not one I earned," Jessica countered, her voice still firm, still resolute. The tension in the room was palpable, almost suffocating. This was quickly becoming the scene my parents had always feared, their perfect family image cracking in public. Dr. Fleming chose that exact moment to stand. "If I might add something to this conversation," she said, her authoritative voice slicing through the nervous murmurs. "This seems like an opportune time to share some news about Audrey that many of you may not be aware of." My parents exchanged worried glances, their faces etched with trepidation. Audrey's research on neurovascular regeneration has earned her the Patterson Fellowship at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Fleming announced, her voice resonating with pride. For those unfamiliar, this is the single most prestigious position offered to a graduating medical student in the country. It comes with full loan forgiveness and a substantial stipend. Gasps and murmurs spread through the room. Dr. Wu was now looking at me with an entirely new, deeply impressed interest. My cousins whispered excitedly. In fact, Dr. Fleming continued, the selection committee specifically cited Audrey's innovative dual-approach methodology, which she developed largely independently while balancing a full clinical rotation schedule. I've had the privilege of mentoring many promising physicians, but rarely have I encountered the level of dedication and insight that Audrey consistently demonstrates. The room erupted in applause, genuine, enthusiastic applause for me. People turned in their seats to look at me, smiling and nodding with unfeigned respect. My parents remained frozen, rooted to their spots. Their expressions were a complicated tableau of shock, confusion, and dawning horror as they realized their carefully constructed narrative about their daughters was publicly unraveling. Jessica, meanwhile, was beaming at me, not a hint of jealousy in her luminous eyes. Dr. Fleming wasn't finished. Additionally, I'm pleased to announce that I've personally arranged for the remainder of Audrey's medical school loans to be covered through our department's Merit Scholarship Fund, a decision unanimously approved by the board in recognition of her extraordinary contributions to our research program. I was debt-free, too, and I had earned every single penny of it. After Dr. Fleming's announcement, the celebration shifted dramatically. Faculty members who had previously gravitated solely toward Jessica were now approaching me, asking about my research and congratulating me on the fellowship. Several of my clinical supervisors shared glowing stories about my work with patients that I hadn't even realized they'd noticed. My parents remained at their table, shock still evident on their faces. They weren't just processing the news of my fellowship and loan forgiveness. They were witnessing the complete dismantling of the narrative they constructed about their daughters. The quiet, self-sufficient twin they had consistently overlooked was now the unequivocal center of professional admiration. Jessica made her way to my side, champagne glass in hand. "Congratulations, sis," she said, clinking her glass against mine, her eyes shining. "The Patterson Fellowship. That's incredible. Why didn't you tell me?" "I only found out this morning," I explained, "and I didn't want to overshadow your celebration." Jessica frowned, a genuine furrow in her brow. This ridiculous party was Mom and Dad's idea, not mine. I tried to tell them it was over the top and unfair to you. But you know how they get once they've decided something. "You did?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "Of course I did." Jessica looked genuinely hurt that I'd even question it. "Audrey, I've always known they treated us differently. I didn't know how to fix it without making things worse." Before I could respond, Dr. Margaret Wu approached us. "Dr. Collins," she said, looking directly at me, "I was very impressed by Dr. Fleming's account of your research. We should discuss whether you'd consider bringing your work to our neurosurgery department instead of Johns Hopkins." I blinked in astonishment. "That's very flattering, Dr. Wu." "But she's already accepted the Patterson," Jessica interjected, putting her arm around my shoulders proudly. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But you should know, my sister never does just one revolutionary thing at a time. I bet she'll have another groundbreaking study underway within months of arriving in Baltimore." Dr. Wu smiled. "Well, when you've completed the fellowship, keep Detroit in mind. We'd be fortunate to have you." She nodded to Jessica. "Both of you, in your respective specialties." After she walked away, I turned to Jessica in amazement. "You didn't have to do that. I know you wanted to stay in Detroit for your residency. And I still can," Jessica said, her voice resolute. "But I won't do it by letting Mom and Dad manipulate the situation or by letting you miss out on opportunities. That's not who I want to be." Across the room, I saw my parents finally rising from their table, moving hesitantly in our direction. Their path was slow, interrupted by guests who now wanted to talk about me, a novel experience that was clearly unsettling for them. "Here they come," Jessica murmured. "Ready for this?" "Not really," I admitted, a nervous laugh escaping me. "Dr. Fleming certainly had some impressive things to say about you," my father said when they finally reached us, his tone carefully calibrated to sound proud, while subtly masking his confusion. "The Patterson Fellowship. That's quite an honor. Why didn't you tell us you were even being considered for something so prestigious? Would it have mattered? I asked quietly, looking from one parent to the other. You've made it clear where your support and interest lie. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. That's not fair, Audrey, my father began. We've always supported both of you. Differently, my mother interjected quickly, a weak attempt at justification. We supported you both differently because you had different needs. Jessica shook her head. Mom, Dad, let's not do this tonight. But we're going to have a real conversation about this soon. All of us. She gave me a meaningful look. No more pretending. Dr. Fleming appeared at my elbow, a welcome interruption, saving me from having to respond. Audrey, the dean would like a word. Something about featuring your fellowship in the alumni magazine. She smiled at my parents, her expression pleasant, but her eyes possessed that familiar, steely glint. You must be incredibly proud to have raised two such accomplished daughters, though I imagine it's particularly gratifying to see Audrey's hard work recognized after all she's overcome. The emphasis on overcome was subtle but unmistakable. My parents had the grace to look genuinely embarrassed. Well, my mother said weakly, we've always known Audrey was special too. Little too late, I thought, but didn't say. The week after the celebration was transformative. News of my Patterson Fellowship spread like wildfire through the medical community in Detroit. Suddenly, doors that had been closed to me swung open. Former professors who had given Jessica extensions but denied mine were now emailing to congratulate me. Classmates who had barely acknowledged my existence during 4 years of medical school suddenly claimed close friendship. My parents, meanwhile, were attempting damage control. They showed up at my apartment the day after the party with gift bags and 4 smiles. We've been thinking, my father said, placing a small, velvet box on my coffee table. With both of you graduating and starting your careers, we should get you girls something special. We got you this. Inside was a rose gold watch, identical to the one they'd given Jessica for her birthday 6 months earlier. It's lovely, I said without reaching for it, though a bit late. My mother flinched. Audrey, we know you must feel overlooked sometimes, but everything we did was because we knew you could handle challenges on your own. Jessica needed more support. That's a convenient narrative, I replied, keeping my voice steady, remarkably calm. But it doesn't explain why you attended her presentations, but skipped mine. Why you paid for her MCAD prep course, but told me to use free online resources. Why you covered her living expenses during medical school, but suggested I take out additional loans for mine. We only have so much money, Audrey, my father protested, his voice defensive. We had to make choices. Yes, you did. I agreed, my gaze unwavering. And consistently, you chose Jessica. My mother's eyes welled with tears. We love you both equally, she insisted. Maybe you do, I conceded. But you haven't treated us equally, and watches and belated recognition won't change that. My phone rang then, Dr. Fleming, calling to discuss my upcoming move to Baltimore. I answered it gratefully, turning away from my parents' stunned faces. Yes, I'm available to discuss the housing options, I said into the phone, relief flooding through me. In fact, your timing is perfect. 3 weeks later, I stood in my empty apartment, the last boxes packed and ready for the moving company. Jessica sat on the windowsill, watching me tape up a final container of books. I still can't believe you're leaving next week, she said, a hint of sadness in her voice. Detroit won't be the same without you. You'll be too busy with your residency to notice I'm gone. I teased gently, though there was a kernel of truth in it. We'd been inseparable through medical school, but our paths were finally diverging. Mine to Johns Hopkins, hers staying at Detroit Medical. I keep thinking about what Mom and Dad did, Jessica said suddenly, her gaze distant. Or didn't do, I guess. All these years, I thought I was the lucky one because they paid more attention to me. But they were really holding me back, making me dependent on their approval. I sat beside her on the windowsill. You didn't do anything wrong, Jess. I didn't do enough right either, she countered, a rare self-reproach in her tone. I should have spoken up sooner. She sighed, a long, weary exhalation. They're devastated, you know. Mom keeps crying about how you must hate them. Dad's telling everyone who will listen about his brilliant daughter at Johns Hopkins, like he personally funded your research. Let them, I said, surprising myself with how little it bothered me now. Their approval doesn't define me anymore. And it was true. The constant ache of seeking validation from parents who would never truly see me had finally subsided. Dr. Fleming's mentorship had shown me what genuine support looked like, challenging me when I needed it, pushing me, defending me when I needed protection, and always seeing my potential without qualification. So what happens now? Jessica asked, looking at me, a question in her eyes. With us, I mean. I took her hand. We find our own way forward without the competition they created between us. I like that. Jessica smiled, squeezing my hand warmly. Dr. Audrey Collins, Patterson Fellow. I'm so proud of you, sis. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. The path ahead was challenging, but clear and entirely mine to navigate on my own terms. Tell me, have you ever experienced a moment where you realized your family's dynamic was completely different than you perceived it? How did you navigate that? And what did you learn about yourself in the process?